G'day and welcome to SPCs Unleashed, Season 2, Episode 2. If you missed last week, you'll have missed the fact we're now unleashed from spending every week talking about safe competencies. And we are diving into some of our favourite topics. And if you watched Season 1 at all, you would have figured out that Niko is very passionate about coaching and he's not alone in that. So, Niko, take us away.
With pleasure, with pleasure. Thank you very much, Mark. Hi, Stephan. Hi, dear audience, live audience, and listeners to podcasts. So today is the question, how can SPCs unlock the potential of others to maximize the impact of the organization? So we start our preparation work around a week earlier with on a Miro board with a framing. And the framing is always the part of the moderator. And this time I wanted to know the word coach isn't protected, which leads to a wide variety of interpretations and practices. So I wanted to explore the essence of coaching and what it means, and better understand how we can empower SPCs, how we can empower other people, other consultants. So today we will explore about what coaching truly means, what's the difference between agile coaching and traditional coaching, good versus bad coaching, consulting versus coaching versus mentoring. I don't know. So welcome to SPCs Unleashed, Season 2, Episode 2, and how can we grow in our role as a coach? And I would like to start with your passions. So Mark told already, I'm passionate about this topic. What is your passion?
Look, I think you could sum up what makes coaching great with something that happens pretty regularly with one of it's a woman I've been coaching for I guess 3 or 4 years now across multiple jobs, and every now and again I'll call to check in. And at the moment I'm not actively working with her. I'm sure there'll be another time sometime soon where I will be, but I'll call and check in and say, how you doing? She'll say, I'm awesome, Mark. I had the best chat with you last week. And I'd go, but we didn't talk last week. And she'll say, yeah, but I had something and I was really puzzled about it. And I thought about calling you. And then I had this mental conversation in my head of what would Mark ask me if I called him. And I had a 5-minute conversation with you because I knew all the questions you'd asked me. And then I went and did what I knew that I should have done in the first place. And for me, when you build that with somebody you coach, that's what coaching is all about.
Oh, great. I can connect very much with that. I so many times had calls and feedbacks. Oh, you helped me so much with, you showed me so much. And in my head, so I haven't done anything, just asking questions and realizing you're helping without really, in your case, without thinking you're helping. It's just being there and asking the right things. So it resonates very much with me. Stephan, your passion in coaching.
What me gets up every Saturday morning for these episodes is we think alike, right? From different perspectives. And I could second what I just heard from you. I think it's the attitude. And I read an article about good politicians. And the article said these were the guys who served and then they disappeared, but they left with an impact, right? And I like that. Being second line, helping people. They perform on center stage, no matter if you are here in the audience, if you are at the backstage, if you are at home, just great.
Perfect. And Mark already kicked off the first question. So what makes good coaches? What makes bad coaches? Can you also share some experiences of both? What makes a good coach, Mark?
Look, I think it's almost easier to define what makes a bad coach, because by definition that tells you what a good coach is. A bad coach is somebody who wants to be in the center, who are looking for people to recognize their contribution, who want to be acknowledged as the reason things were amazing. And they're very centrally focused on themselves as opposed to focused on the people they're coaching. And I think if you flip that, what makes a great coach? A great coach is someone who makes the people they coach shine.
That's great. Stephan, what makes a good coach?
Yeah, I probably have to repeat myself. Serve and disappear, right? And I would even use this analogy of we're in the same car, but you should be in the passenger seat. The people should be driving. But we all know when we learn to drive, first of all, the coach or the mentor sat at the passenger at the driving wheel showing us how to operate the car, and then you switched over, and that's for me good coaching, right? Bad coaching again, as Mark said, I'm at the steering wheel talking and talking and talking, and people are observing me, watching me, but they would like to drive the car, but they can't. I'm driving. And that's what I saw quite often. Uh, Even I made that mistake quite often, sitting on the left side in Switzerland and Europe, right, driving the car and thinking I'm doing a good job. And guess what, guys? I went onto Save Copilot and I punched in what is coaching, what does it mean, and it supports what we just mentioned. You're a facilitator of change, and change is driving to the passenger seat. You promote the collaboration in the car, right? You will have some people at the back as well talking to you, and in the end, it's whoever is at the steering wheel should be a good driver. And that's
I,
what I experience quite often with that.
Actually, I'm thinking about that metaphor of the passenger seat of the car. And I've now been through 3 children learning to drive. Sorry, excuse me. So 3 children learning to drive. And I have a system with every child, which is I will pay for them to get 5 or 6 lessons from a driving instructor before we try and drive with them. And the main reason I do that is because I know the driving instructor has an extra brake pedal on the passenger side of the car.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
you know, what are they? That's a safety net. If the learner driver is about to have a horrendous accident, you know they've got that extra brake pedal, and it's a safety system for them. And then as they start to grow and become a little bit more confident, you don't need that safety net. But I think also quite often as a coach, you're providing a safety net for the people you're coaching to stretch themselves, to try new things, and know that you're there if they need you. So yeah.
May I jump in on this one? I like the extra brake pedal, right? And that leads me to, who do I trust? I, as the learner, do I trust the coach, right? And for me, that's a big issue when it comes to coaching. And you both, Mark and Niko, you mentioned, right? People come back to you after your coaching sessions because they trust you. And that's the best gold medal you can get as a coach or as a mentor.
If we stay in this example with learning driving a car, I once asked a colleague of mine when I was younger, around 18, why he doesn't exercise with his father, because it's much more cheaper. Why? And they told me, yeah, each time we do something complicated, he just helps me from the other side. So no, to park, press on this. No, it's this way here. And in my head, I've seen a comic. He was just walking around the car, throwing away, and so that's the way how you do it. So, and he always told me, whatever he does, you always have somebody who's really trying to show you how you're doing it right, instead of giving me the chance, experience it myself. And that's why he really took the job to pay the driver teacher, because he said, I cannot learn it with my father, because he always wants to have it perfect. He always has a better opinion how to do it. And by the way, that's not coaching. This kind of technique. It's really knowing everything better and trying to create a carbon copy of you. That's not the idea of coaching. I had this year at the Safe Summit in Denver a nice epiphany. I was part of a session letting people coach, really exercising, making groups of 3. One was the coach, one was the coachee, the other was the observer, and yeah, I just walked around and see what's happening there. And I've witnessed really great coaching, but at some point, really, oh gosh, that's not coaching. What are you doing? So how can you explain this now nicely? So I asked my co-leads, can I say something in between? Because the next round was again a round of coaching. And then I said to them, I've seen good and not so good coaching. What makes a coach a good coach? Was just the question of the audience. And I thought, okay, we'll wait a little bit and struggle and go forward and back. And the half of the room immediately answered, a good coach talks less than the coachee. And that was what I observed. I walked around the room and I thought, so why are you talking? Why are you explaining things? Why are you saying, have you tried to do this and this? That's not the question. Yeah, it is one semantically or with the syntax, but it's not really a question. Have you tried this and this? Have you thought to leave your partner and kill your kids? No, that's not the question. It's just a suggestion what we would do. And I was really happy to see that the people know it, but they didn't done it. So they needed much more exercise. And I'm also with you. That's not about your own ego. So it's really hard when you see the solution as a human being. And you know, that's the way to go. Open your eyes. Why are you struggling? But it's not about you. It's not about you giving solutions. It's about you giving the room, the people, like Mark said in the beginning, the room that people can shine. That's your job. And I can also give you one example from my coachings. For me, it was so clear what this person has to do. And there was a 1.5 hour session during my education becoming a coach. And I thought, so, oh gosh, I will die this 1.5 hours. It's so clear what the solution is. And at the end, it was completely something else. It was not about the process. It was not about the company. It was not about doing no retrospectives. That was my solution, by the way. I thought, you need retrospectives. You need retrospectives. How can I ask questions that you realize you need retros? And the end was not retrospectives. It was another person in the room. Whenever this person is there, my coachee was just angry and wasn't able to listen and react. And the problem was really the chemistry between those and not the company. And we would never found that if I just jumped in and say, do a retro. Come on, let's save us an hour. Now I'm talking too much as a moderator. So, but you see, that's my passion, as Mark said in the beginning.
Yeah, I guess Nico, that's a good point, right? For me, coaching is, as you said, less talking, more you are the example. You do hands-on stuff, you show stuff, and people start following you. And I guess that's probably your experience as well, because in your intros, you both said people are coming back because they know it's showtime. I remember at the Safe Summit, right? The MC said it's showtime. Showtime is not you performing on stage, it's being an example. And for me, coaching is a lot of hands-on stuff. And before I can be a good coach, you have to train yourself. You have to do it yourself to be a hands-on coach. And for me, that's a prerequisite to become a good coach, that people feel safe. They see it works, they see how it could be done, and then they move away from the shoe where they just copy to the how, where they start exploring stuff. And that's when I switch into passenger seat, right? When I start observing, and probably then my role will change as well as a coach.
Thank you very much, Stephan. While we are there, I've seen the preparation. You're starting asking Copilot of Safe about coaching. And first, when I read it, I thought, okay, that's a stupid answer, but there's more than just a stupid answer. Can you elaborate a little bit? What happened there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I went. I'm sometimes lazy, right? I went onto Safe Copilot and said, okay, what's coaching? And again, interestingly, I found the article of Jennifer Fawcett where she talks about being a good coach, right? And I highly suggest, guys, I'm not telling you what it is. Go on to Safe Studio, do the research, ask the same questions, and you'll find out it's an awesome article from Jennifer Fawcett about being a good coach in the Safe universe.
So can I just pause on that one for a second, right? Because I think so many people get so confused about coaching. And one of those, I think, for me, is the difference between coach as a role and coaching as a skill set. And
Right.
if you look around at the moment and you look at, you know, what are people looking for in leaders, one of the big skill sets they look for in leaders is coaching skill set. And some of the best leaders that I've worked with have had very strong coaching skill sets. And so I think sometimes you can look at it and go, well, there's the role, which is the coach, and then there's the skill set, which is coaching. And that can be a little bit different.
Say more.
Well, one of the ways I think it might be a little bit different is, so if you look at Lisa Adkins' work, and she probably wrote some of the earliest stuff on coaching in the Agile world, she used to love to talk about the 4 coaching stances. And she would talk about teaching, mentoring, coaching, and facilitating. And a lot of her thrust was to go, which stance is right for that moment in time, and to recognize the stance you're in. And I think, we've been focusing in our conversation so far very much on the coaching stance, which is those skills which are relevant regardless of whether you're role as a coach or whether you're a leader who coaches. But I think if you start to flip lens a little bit into perhaps my role as a coach, then at that point in time, I find myself flipping between various roles, stances. What do people need from me at the moment? I don't know about you guys, but I found every now and again I'll go a very long time where all my work is coaching, and then I'll get back into the training room. And it's almost liberating to be in the training room and be able to actually impart knowledge.
Yeah. Right.
And you're still going to be facilitating in how you do it, but that moment to go, oh, now I'm in training stance and I can just give you knowledge, as opposed to I'm in coaching stance and I'm sitting in a very different seat in my relationship with you. And I think that kind of awareness of coaching skills being relevant regardless of your role, but actually if your role is to be a coach, then probably being much more aware of, which stance is right for the moment in time, given your role. I don't know, what do you
I
reckon,
think
guys?
I think, Mark, this is really crucial, right? The right stuff at the right time in the right way. I would summarize it like this. And to use another analogy, I would talk about my backpack, right? Sometimes on a journey, you need a light backpack and it's on your back. But sometimes when you have a rest, when you have a pause, it's not on your back, it's on your side. And you might pick something out of it. But sometimes it's just there, just in case you need it, right? Someone shows up and says, oh, after a 10K hike, I do have a blister. Do you have some remedy? Do you have something to help me, right? And then you need your backpack as well. So the question for me is always in a certain context, and that probably leads us then to the ties to being a consultant. Do I assess the context in the right way to be a good coach? The right stuff at the right time. Sometimes a light backpack, sometimes you do a march. In the army, we did that with 25 kilos on our back because we knew we had to overnight somewhere in the wop-wops, and you need a tent, you need a sleeping bag, you need extra stuff, right? Otherwise, you won't survive. You will starve. So I find it interesting what you said, Mark, changing also between role, activity, the contextual behavior. Sometimes I'm training, sometimes I'm just giving out information, bringing people on the same flight level, I'd say, right? And sometimes I'm leading. I might even be influencing in a certain way as a coach, right? But in a good way, not what we see nowadays in social media. And I think this is the exciting part of being an SPC or an SPCT, having every day a new perspective, getting ready for the day, not just walking into the day and finding out, oh, I miss my backpack, or it's too small, or it's too heavy.
It just inspired me to another story I didn't put on my preparation board. Is when I tried to be more coach than consultant, or more systemic coach than agile coach, I did one trick for myself. I changed the consulting hour and the coaching hour. So I was at the same client, and they had 2 rates. Am I now an agile coach or am I a systemic coach? Because I realized it was so difficult staying in the role I've chosen, or they've chosen for me. And so really, I increased the coaching billable hour, the coaching rate. And whenever I tried to break out of coaching and being a consultant, or whenever they ask me, so please give me advice, I said, okay, yeah, but you paid for coaching and now you want to have consulting. Do you want to do that? Or let's do it at the end. If the coaching doesn't help you, let's go to consulting the last 5 minutes with the higher rate. It was just a trick for myself, and it really helped a lot, staying on the coaching and letting people think and work on their own issues. So and for me, it was really helpful to distinguish between when am I an agile coach, which is sometimes more consulting than coaching, to be honest, and when I'm really only a coach. And this also made it a little bit difficult because I sometimes felt, okay, am I now only a question machine as a coach? And there are a lot of intervention sessions about that because I really want to say, okay, my identity is agile coaching, and now I'm trying to do something else. Is it okay that I ask these questions, or is it okay that I intervened? And I get a lot of great answers from my peers in the intervention sessions and saying, you also as a coach have your personality, not bringing it in, not caring for your people. It's also not coaching. So that's why at the moment I don't have a fear of AI, because they don't have this empathy for the others. As a coach, you still need connections. You still sometimes have to choose, okay, now I will say something because I care for you. And it's still coaching and not advising or consulting or something else. Stories from your side.
Do you want to go first, Stephan, or shall I?
No, just shoot.
All right,
I can see you bubbling.
I'm going to shoot on this one. And again, it's something I think there's a lot of confusion about, right? If you're sitting in that, what is an agile coach? If you look really strictly at, coaching definitions, then by definition, there almost can't be such a thing as an agile coach.
Yeah.
But, and this is this separation between, am I there to help you discover the knowledge you already have by finding the right question you need versus my need for knowledge. And I actually say there was quite a wave of this confusion in the Australian market. And we went through a phase where a lot of large enterprises were gearing up and hiring very large armies of coaches. And they wound up hiring one particular organization hired probably 30 coaches who'd never done any delivery and never worked in Agile, right? They all had great life coaching skills. And they knew how to ask questions, to probe people's feelings. They had no clue how to do Agile delivery. And it was a complete fiasco. And I think there's a piece in that, if you think about so much of coaching is finding the right question, you need to be able to draw on a knowledge base to understand the questions that might be useful. And that's the bit where it's becoming an agile coach, is what's the knowledge base I draw on when I find the question that's going to help you in this moment.
Let me pick that one up, Mark. I think, let me use the analogy of soccer, right? You can play backyard soccer, you can play Champions League. Both is soccer, right? The question is, where do you start? Where are you in your evolution as a team, as individuals, as an organization? And then let me throw in what gets me now and then is, if you look at LinkedIn and other platforms, almost everyone is a coach nowadays, right? Without any training. So yes, probably you can play and coach backyard soccer and declare yourself as a coach. But when it comes to Champions League, I am sure that the big teams, they only accept a coach who really does hands-on stuff, who probably played soccer, who has a good understanding of tactics and what is the opponent able to do, what is the impact of the environment. So again, contextualize what's going on as a coach is, for me, is important. And for me, if I look at the label coach, the first thing I do is I look, how do they play soccer, right? And how's the impact of coaching? And that's for me either good and true coaching, or it's just coaching by name. It's just a change of labels, or is it a game changer? And that's the aspiration for me as well as a coach, right? How do I invest in myself as a coach? Because coaching backyard soccer, I probably can do that. When it comes to the regional league, to the national league, to the Champions League, that's a whole different abstraction layer, which is demanding. And I'm pretty apprehensive calling me an executive coach or a coach on a certain level if I haven't done that, if I haven't learned from the best in the trade, right?
And that's really a cool thing you're saying now, Stephan. Why it is important to know the context you're coaching. Because usually you can coach when you have no idea about the topic. And by the way, this was one of my feedbacks during my education. You're best when I have no idea about the topic. So, okay, is it really true? Yeah, it was great in being a poor coach, but usually knowing something about the method you're coaching helps you. And I can give you one little story. With one company I worked, they really separated it, the systemic coaching, the leadership coaching, and the agile coaching. Two separate companies. And they are specialized companies only doing leadership coaching. And they ended up that we messed up agile because there was one talk from a leader. He asked, yeah, they are not planning anymore, the agile people. And it's really hard. And now an agile coach would go to a different path, or a coach with an agile background would go to a different path. This coach had no idea about agile, and he started to say, okay, oh, had you had similar experience in the past where something like that happened, when your team go a different direction than you went? Yeah, I had it then and then and then and then. Okay, so what tools do you know? What resources do you have to challenge this? Yeah, then I just said, you go there, 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 and then I set direction. Okay, oh great. So you have the tool set. Go for it. Ugh. As a systemic coach with agile background, I would ask, oh, that's interesting that the people are not planning. Yeah, that's how agile is. Okay, wow, that's how agile is. Okay, why do we have this impression? Where does it come from? But I don't know. So, okay, maybe to the next session, you tell me the references, why this happens so, why theory is saying that, you say theory is saying that. So you go to a completely different path to going back to your, what you've done before, to your DNA or reflexes, going to a different path where you learn about. And that's why sometimes, or usually, it's okay having this knowledge. It's not okay telling them, so what? They're not planning. They are stupid people. They have to plan because, and you come with then you are consulting. And that's really, it's a fine balance what we are doing. But you need, as we said before, to be a football coach, I have to know a little bit about football, because otherwise, it's not the best
Doesn't
idea.
work. Yeah.
Exactly. Mark, I've seen you just put a card. What you want to talk about next on our backstory meter board?
Look, it feels like I'm almost shifting our direction, but one of the prior questions you gave us was, what makes a great coach, or what are some of the attributes? And for me, one of the biggest ones is your ability to build trust. And is it trust that you have good intentions? Is it trust that you're a safe space and anything that's said to you will go no further? Yeah. The moment when you can start to really have it as an impact as a coach is the moment when you've built some trust. And it could be as simple as people going, where's that, what directions, what's behind that question? And it's like the race is not to show people how good you are or how much you know. The race is to build a trust relationship, which gives you a foundation for almost everything that happens after that.
I second that, Mark. It's you become friends over time, right? It's not customers anymore or clients. It's more like a relationship, a friendship, and that works.
But yeah, Mark, please.
A quick aside on the way through. That gets tricky a little bit though, because it is like that, right? And
yeah,
my wife can tell, certain times she can tell from the other end of the house who I'm on a coaching call with, because she can hear the tone of my voice.
Yeah.
And you do get these really deep relationships. But I've had a couple of long-term coaching relationships that have become friendships. And then it's kind of weird, because, the things you know about that person and their life and their challenges and their struggles and their hopes and fears because of your coaching relationship are completely out of all proportion to what you would know about them as a friend. And you're suddenly in this moment, oh, we're friends now. But, we're kind of new friends. And I know your life story for the last 5 years in its intimate detail. It's an interesting one when you're crossing that friendship boundary. But I interrupted you, Niko. You were going to take it somewhere more serious.
No, it was going in the same direction. So what I fear as a coach is that the professional relationship we are having is becoming too much a friendship, and you are funnier and not serious anymore. And what I try to do is my coachings always have an end. So when you pay or buy a systemic coaching from my side, you got a train ticket with 6 marks. You can just go and stand for it. And the first time you buy the ticket, you write the goal on it. And then the first session is just finding out, is it the right goal for you? And then you have 5 more of them. Sometimes you need 4, sometimes you need 6. But when the ticket finishes, so each time you come, you just take one ride. And then the last ride is about checking, do we arrive on the goal you're having or not? And if we arrived there, I try to anchor the new techniques you learned on this session, and then it's over. So you can buy a new ticket, but it's really something you do actively. I want to have a new 6 tickets for this train ride with you. And if not, that's great, because now the next half year or year, you can see if you can do it by your own. And then if you need, again, coaching, you need a new ticket. Where's the goal? And so on and so on. And that's how I'll try to protect me from just becoming buddies and me not being professional anymore. And do you have any such kind of boundaries, or how do you handle that?
Let me clarify what I meant with this friendship, and then let's move on.
Yeah.
It's the friendship on the playground, because the playground sets the boundaries. Off field, it's a different thing, right? And I distinguish between those two areas or environments. It's the playground, but it's a different game, because you have a certain friendship that really works between coach and coachee, or mentor and mentee, because you play together. You're together in the car, but if you're outside the car, different world. I go left, you go right.
Yeah, it's that trust you need and that you have on the playground with your colleagues. Oh, that's great.
I think
Next thing, indeed. Sorry.
I'm going to just sit in that boundary section for a second, because, it's a truth a lot of us have to navigate. We're working with people, wearing different hats. And if you have a relationship that there will be sessions or moments in that relationship where it's coaching, that's the base of the relationship, and moments where it will be something else. Developing some deliberate protocols to recognize. I know when I was first learning facilitation, they taught us one thing that said, look, sometimes as a facilitator, you've got to join the conversation. You're asked to join the conversation. You've got a signal to the room that says, I'm no longer in facilitation mode, I'm joining the conversation, because I'm now no longer the impartial, listener and opener of a conversation. I'm offering an opinion. And, we learnt this technique that said, if you're facilitating, you're standing, and you announce to the room, hey, if you need to draw me into the conversation, I can. When I sit down, I'm taking off my facilitator hat. What is that quite explicit thing that goes backwards and forwards? And, I remember when I first really got deep into coaching, I spent 3 years studying how to ask questions, right? And it was literally just book after book after book, trying to figure out how to ask more powerful questions on the basis of a coaching session I received that just blew my mind. And my wife would come to me to talk about things, and I would automatically go into coaching mode with her. And it wasn't long before she said, Mark, I need a husband, not a coach.
Right.
But then every now and again, she'll say, hey, I need Coach Mark. Or I'll have a friend who'll say, hey, I'd really appreciate some coaching through a moment. And I'll look back and I'll say, are you sure you want Coach Mark? And she say, yes, I want Coach Mark. Okay, you can have Coach Mark now. And, we signal the fact that we're switching into coaching mode, and then we'll signal the fact when we switch back out. And building a protocol if you've got to navigate your way through moments.
Yes.
I would also like to add that this is something I love doing it, is saying, okay, let's now me being the coach, let's now me being the architect, let's now me being in the role of that and that. And that sets a frame for your audience, because if you have a lot of experience, you had many roles in your life. And being explicit with the role you are talking now helps the people, because it's not Niko talking, it's Niko in the head, being an architect, and now being the consultant, and now being the coach. And somebody once told me, it's really interesting, you always do this gesture before you say I'm now, and it's somewhere in my body. I don't do it with conscious. It just happened when I say, let me switch the head, and I'm doing this, and people realize, okay, now it's just on the television. Now it's a different channel. Let's listen. Okay, now it's coaching. It does something with the people. I want to switch to something which I don't know if Mark fears or likes, because at the beginning he says, oh no, gosh, she's hurting me with that nice questions. We call this now jiggles. This part of the episodes is this time is the question: if the coach would be a circus artist, which one would it be? So you are now a circus artist as a coach. Who are you and why?
You're waiting for me, aren't you, Stefan?
I do. We can tell.
So I have to tell you, like many of Niko's questions that he's asked over time, the first thing I had to do was go to ChatGPT and say, list the 50 most popular types of circus artists that I could scan it. And I had a moment of tension for the temptation for the knife thrower's assistant, but it didn't really feel like a coaching question. For me, it's, with the trapeze, the flying trapeze, there's the catcher. And they basically do nothing, right? They just hang upside down by their legs. They never do any tricks. And you never really watch them. You watch the amazing person doing triple somersaults in the air and backflips and all kinds of craziness. But that catcher is like the anchor. And without the catcher there, the star could never be the star. So if a coach was a circus artist, they'd be the catcher on the trapeze.
Perfect. Thank you for the summary, because we lost at the beginning, or in my case, I lost the beginning. So the catcher of the trapeze thingy. Great. Stefan.
When I read the question, I first thought about the people standing at the entrance to the arena, moving the curtains. And then I reread the question, and you were asking for an artist. So I would say a coach is more someone who supports, right? And then, okay, I said, yep, Niko, you want an artist? And again, like Mark, I Googled, okay, what are the different artists you could find that are closest to being a coach? And I found the tightrope walker. It's a lot about balance, but also precision. If you are not precise, you fall down, right? It's about taking risks. Sometimes you have to move faster, slower. You need some tools like the big bar to get your balance. You will have missteps for sure. I'm still not the best coach. So, and sometimes it even has fatal consequences, right? And you have to bear and you have to live with that. And the other one is, if I want to be a coach, I have to be mentally tough and focused. I'm on the rope now. Please, no distraction. But the world throws a lot of distraction at me, even as a coach, in that context where I'm tempted to do this and that, and I have another answer, and I have another topic that I could throw in. No, let's be focused and move away the distractions. So for me, it's the tightrope walker.
Great. When I wrote the question, I thought, okay, you will not come with a circus director or with a lion dompter or something like that. I was aware of that. And then yesterday, I realized I have to answer this question too for myself. So I was sitting there and said, okay, and I had similar thoughts as Stefan. I would love to put somebody there who is not an artist. And then I thought, okay, there is an artist in the circus, which is not really an artist, and that's the band. So I've chosen, I know, so the circus artist is an artist in the circus, but I've chosen the band because they support the real artists. They are not telling them what to do. They're not being in the foreground and imposing and saying, yeah, I'm now the solo drummer, yeah, or I'm now the solo guitar player. They're just there in the background and making the show even better and let the people shine. And that's why I cheat a little bit. I've chosen an artist, but not really a circus artist. Yeah, that's when we have to answer your own questions. Thank you very much. But taking these pictures with us, did you have any challenges as a coach? Being the circus director, being the dompter, and realizing, no, I'm the rope artist. I'm the one who catches on the trapeze. I should be the music player in the background. Did you have such experience in your life as a coach, such challenges?
Quite a few.
Yeah, you go, Stefan.
Quite a few, but okay, quite a few. I think still my biggest challenge is to know when to step back, changing role or just observing, right? I've done my job. It's good enough. They can drive the car. They can play the game. I'm still too much involved, too long. That's one of my challenges I have, and I'm still working on that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other one we already mentioned, to maintain boundaries, right? We're on the playing ground. We're in the action, or it's a pause, it's a different environment. So again, to bring the friendship into the right perspective, right? We're human beings, we have relations, but the relations can change even within the context. And for me, these are the two biggest challenges I really face as a coach.
I actually, the more I think about it, the more I like your tightrope artist, Stephan,
Mhm.
and the precision aspect of it, of choosing exactly what's right in the moment, recognizing what somebody needs from you, where they're at, what the situation is, and being able to respond appropriately. Because there are times when a deep coaching question is not the right answer.
Absolutely.
And, there's a little mantra that I always run, is it a learning opportunity or a cliff? Somebody's about to do something stupid. It's the wrong thing. It's a stupid thing to do. But, they're just heading for it. And no matter how gently you probe and question, they're going down that path. You've got to figure out, is this is it a mistake they're going to make that there's a learning moment in? And perhaps can I plant some seeds for them now that after the learning moment, we can go back and really capitalize on, and not in a kind of I told you so way, but drawing their attention to some of the repercussions about what they're going to do so that you can get coach back into them, as opposed to going, are they about to run over a cliff? Because they're about to run over a cliff. There's no coming back and learning from that mistake.
Yeah.
And just recognizing and then, holding your nerve. Because sometimes, and this probably comes back to being an agile coach, sometimes you just really, really desperately don't want them to do what they're about to do. And you just got to go, yes, but if they do it and they learn from it, there's so much better in the future than if I found some way to prevent them from doing it, because they'd never had that moment. It would just be, okay, we'll listen to Mark because he knows best.
May I pick that one up? May I pick that
Yeah.
one up, Mark? Before it comes to kind of a learning opportunity, or where you really have to stop people before they jump off the cliff because it's dead end, right? For me, before that, there's the moment of gut feeling. And over the last few years, gut feeling has become an issue as well for me as a coach. Any experience from your side, Niko and Mark?
Yeah, yes, that's why humans are still the best coaches than AI, because we have a gut at least. But it only works, gut feeling only works if you have the experience. So gut feeling doesn't work in new situation, and that's really the important thing. And whenever I realize I don't have this gut feeling, I make a break. So this was one of the tips I want to said earlier. You are not the answer machine or the perfect question machine. When you're overwhelmed yourself by the situation, just recognize and say it. And in my case, I say, okay, I think we need fresh air. We let us open the window, make a break, and then you have time to take a break yourself, because it's really a huge job you're doing. You're a jonglage you are doing, and then you have time to just reevaluate the situation. So and this is also learned in my trainings. I witnessed a great coaching by an expert, and at one point she's just said, "Let's make a break. Let's bring some fresh air." And nicely, you can open windows in Europe. No, so you open it, fresh air, and then you have a break, and then it starts completely somewhere else. And yeah, a gut feeling is something with experience, and that's why good coaches are mostly older than just yesterday. I've done my master's degree in something, so yeah, it's possible without, but that's the difference between good and great.
I think there's maybe just doubling down on gut feeling and looking at it through a different lens. One of the, I look back and I go, who do I feel like I learned most about coaching from? And there's two names above and beyond everybody else. It's Jerry Weinberg and Esther Darby. And, wow, did I learn a lot from them. And I had a moment when, I had the privilege of being on a 6-day immersion course with Jerry and Esther. And I was watching Jerry, and he was in his late 80s at the time. And these were long days, right? It was often 10 or 11-hour days. And there was no teaching, right? It was all exploratory, experiential learning oriented. And it was all about what he could draw out of us. And we'd actually started the week with a personality profile session, and we'd explored what your personality profile could tell you about yourself and perhaps about interactions with others. and he'd shared his, and he was a deep introvert. And I looked at him and, I walked up to him day 3, day 4, and I said, look, how are you doing it? You're 88, you're in that chair 10, 12 hours a day with us. You're a deep introvert. Don't you just want to run screaming and find your cave? And he said, look, no, because I've just got to listen to the music. And I said, what do you mean you got to listen to the music? He said, you've got to pay attention to what's going on within you. Because if you can feel yourself, your heartbeat start to race, if you can feel your emotions start to rise, it's actually a signal back to yourself that you're probably trying too hard. And instead of drawing the energy from others, you're trying to provide the energy yourself. And, we had quite a chat about it afterwards. And he said, look, it's one of the biggest things you've got to learn is to understand what's going on in you. Because whatever's going on in you is going to be influencing everything else that's happening. And paying attention to that. And sometimes your body will tell you things that all of your other powers of observation won't. Back to Niko's comment about sometimes you just got to take a break. Right? It's that moment when your body's telling you, hey, this is not an atmosphere in which good things are going to happen. We've got to find somewhere to step away and reset that. So I think there's gut feeling, which is, intuition, just pointing you in the right direction. But I think the other thing is, what's your gut telling you? What's your body telling you about what's happening in that moment? And are you actually listening to yourself as well as the person you're coaching?
Oh, that's great. Let's continue with this kind of tone at the moment. What do you see how young SPCs, how our SPCs can grow in this area, in this realm we're having? So listen to your body, listen, feeling the atmosphere. Do you have other tips? What young SPCs? We're still SPCs Unleashed.
Look, if you go back to the young SPC, and I think we rewind the conversation a long way, back to your systemic coaching days, where it was like the more you know, the harder it's going to be a good coach, right? Because your knowledge is going to get in your way of actually powerful coaching. And SPC is a knowledge-based certification. There's nothing involved in coaching skills and being certified as an SPC, right? I have studied, I have learnt, I have acquired knowledge, and I could use that knowledge to pass an exam.
Yeah.
And there's a natural temptation to go, well, now I'm an SPC, my job is to share that knowledge. So, what's the first thing? Well, how are you going to use that knowledge? Are you going to use that knowledge to find amazing questions? Or are you going to try and use that knowledge to impart it to somebody else? If you're a young SPC, you need to go study coaching somewhere. Is it systemic coaching? Well, that's the kind of aggressive one. Is it, go on a very coaching oriented course? Is it read books? What is it that's going to teach you about coaching? And the further you go from Agile in the title of where you're learning about coaching, the more likely it is to be useful to you.
I fully support that, Mark. It's like, for me, the best way to bridge the gap between I know something, how can I adapt it, or how can I become a good coach, was acquiring the new skills and then go into training mode, right? Because they then throw questions at you where you find more gaps. And that helped me to become, in certain aspects, a more a T-shaped person, having a certain knowledge, right? But then deepen your knowledge in certain domains and areas to become a better coach over the time. So training is a good step for me, becoming better. And then also, the longer I'm a coach, I will probably observe that I will move from coaching to mentorship. What's the difference for me? That's my definition. Coaching is the hands-on stuff I do in the context. Mentorship is more like being a lighthouse, right? Lots of ships passing by, and I'm like a reference point, observing. And if you see that the ship is really deviating, then you have to get onto your radio and say, guys, hey, steer to the right, to the left. You're on the wrong path, right?
You just gave me an idea for a next episode, Stephan.
Perfect.
I loved your advice, and I think one thing that is difficult for a young SPC or a young person is not having I want to shine, I want to show, and that's usually, as a young person, you want to see that you are worthy, that you know something. That's exactly what the coach isn't doing. Is like you said before, you're in the background. You should let others shine. And I think that's the important thing. You're realizing you are not important. Your knowledge is not important. You don't have to shine with your knowledge. Of course, you as a person are important because you build the trust, you build the environment. Your knowledge is important because you can help others not going into the wrong direction. But it's not you on the stage and answering and shouting out what's the real truth. And that's hard for young people and people just becoming fresh knowledge people. Like you said, Mark, I have a knowledge certification. It's really difficult. So the first thing I would say to you is try not to shine with your knowledge, and then you will become a great coach. That's one of the first steps. And having the right education, right exercises, and exercise. You not say, tomorrow I'll be a great coach. Let me read 5 books and then I'll be it. It's finding camps and exercising it and sharpening your skills while you're doing it. You can read about a book about sharpening a knife, but we have to sharpen it.
It's also, I think, starting with very small things. Like, I don't know how many times we've said the word question in this episode, and I think we could probably do a whole episode just about how to ask good questions. But, the very beginning is, can you train yourself to use open questions? And, even just master 3 open questions, because I see a lot of people start this path and they keep tripping over their words, and it's like, oh, that's meant to be open, and they get very embarrassed. And you can just go and find 2 or 3 common open questions and teach yourself those to give yourself muscle memory, because you will learn, right? And the other thing you'll learn is that you've got to have the courage to hold the silence while you wait for an answer. And maybe the first thing you do is you go, I'm going to master the question, what questions do you have for me? Because that's a very different question to, do you have any questions? And if you can take, 1, 2, 3 of these kind of classic open questions, and you can build them into your muscle memory, you'll build that confidence and you'll start to see how differently people respond. And then you can go deeper into, more sophisticated questionings and, being able to learn to use that person's answer to find the next question. So just starting really small, building small habits. And these days you can cheat with AI. If you have transcripts of your workshops, right? And most of us these days, pretty easy to have. We had a workshop. I was part of the workshop. Download the transcript and ask an AI to analyze how often you asked a question versus making a statement. You might get a pretty unpleasant surprise. But again, it's going to start to help you build that self-awareness. That's certainly not a tool any of us had when we began. It'd be one that I'd think about very quickly these days.
Great. Hashtag questions. Let's go to our last 2 minutes. And I wonder how many people just go to the end. Because if you had only just one takeaway of this episode, just one takeaway, which one would it be? And I would like to start with Mark. Your one takeaway.
My one takeaway, sorry, I just glanced over and saw Stephan's and I could have predicted that one. So my key takeaway, if you want trust, you need authenticity, vulnerability, and confidentiality. You can't copy somebody else's style as a coach. People will sense that and you're dead. You've got to be true to you. You've got to find what is you as a coach. You've got to have the confidence to be vulnerable because it will invite that in response. And you've got to prove that the coaching conversation stops with you.
Great. In my case, it's you're not important because you know everything. You're important because you guide through the process. And finally, Stephan.
Yes, Mark, I'm a bit predictable. I'm using my mantra that I use quite often. Show up, keep up, shut up. Why am I using it? As an SPC, show up, don't fear the environment, but assess it carefully, right? Keep up, close the gaps, invest in yourself. And if you're there, and if you think you take center stage, then you shut up, because then you are in the right coaching mode.
Perfect. As a great coach, I just shut up and give the last words to Mark.
I was about to say, Niko, it was your episode. Surely you've got the last words for this one.
So thank you very much. I hope it was interesting. Leave some comments wherever you watch this that we can improve, because our next step is the retro, but we're doing this without you. So thank you very much. Thank you to you both. Was much more cooler than I've seen in the preparation. I really loved the episodes. And also to our listeners, just give the feedback, hearts or whatever you can give there, and comments to see how we can continue our journey And for the next week, it's I think it's you, Mark, right?
It is me. For the next week, we're going to explore great facilitation, which, of course, if you're an Agile coach, is probably one of your stances. But, let's not muddy the waters too much. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, Niko. Thanks, Stephan. And we are signing out.